Hey everyone, so I'm overdue on some much needed maintenance in the garden. I feel like I've been worse at general maintenance this year. I mean, we were out of town just a couple weeks apart, and I feel like when I'm out of town, it just throws off my entire schedule. So I need to do a lot of pruning. That's probably going to be the main thing. I think I'm going to pull some plants that are in the process of dying or very near death, and then I'll kind of just see what else I find along the way. I'm sure a pest or two will pop up. I think the only thing I have been more on top of has been fertilizing, because I have made that a regular routine. The rest of it, yeah, not so much. So let me take you around. I'll show you what I need to do today, and then we will get to work. I also probably shouldn't have chosen 2:30 as the time to work in the garden, but that is when it fits best into my schedule today. So let me show you what I need to do. Like I said, I think there's going to be a lot of pruning, so I definitely need to take after my petunias. Even though there's still a lot of flowers on these petunias, I know what they look like in their peak, and as they kind of get more scraggly like they are right now, especially on the top, not as many flowers, that's a good sign that I need to trim them back. They'll be flowerless. I mean, I don't know if I'm going to cut all the flowers off, but they'll flush back within really a week or two, so it's not like you're that long without flowers, and the plants will look better in the long run for the rest of the season. I'm also going to trim a little bit of the petunias here. I think these I'm just going to lift up a little bit, get them out of the herbs, maybe trim a little bit in the middle where they're kind of climbing up the other flowers, although I kind of like that look too. I don't know, we'll see. Ooh, it does look like I need to add this to my list, that I need to apply some iron, because that looks like an iron deficiency on those leaves. So I'll add that to my list. What else am I pruning? I'll prune these petunias. Oh, and just in case you ever do get nervous that they're not going to grow back, this plant right here was originally planted in a pot on the front stoop, which didn't get enough sun. It was very leggy, so I cut it all the way back. There were 0 blooms on this when I pruned it, and now a couple weeks later it is full and beautiful, and it's no longer stretching for the sun. I'm going to pull, or at least clean up, this petunia which is dying. I'm going to manage this. I mean, part of me likes the wild look of some of the vines, but for the ones that I walk into like these, I'm either going to just trim them or tuck them back into the canopy. I'm going to trim these up a little bit. Oh, I also want to do a little bit of pruning on my tomatoes, and I think what I'm going to do is, now that the plants are getting larger, shift these grow bags a little bit more forward, just so there's more airflow as things grow, which is a great part of container gardening. You can move the containers around. So I think, yeah, I'll scooch those out a little bit. I'm going to take some of the branches out of my tomatoes just to have more airflow. Might even trim some of the zinnias a little bit, and then just go through and remove like some yellowing leaves on some of the plants too. And then this tomato plant with the leaf curl, I know I was going back and forth, a lot of different thoughts and opinions. I think I'm either going to pull it or just cut it back to where the leaves aren't curling. I don't know how that's going to go, but I'd rather err on the side of caution if it is some sort of viral issue versus not. So I'd rather get it out of the garden, or at least get the parts of the garden that are curling out, and then we'll see what happens. I'm going to remove some of the yellow leaves on here. It is watered, even though it's drooping. It just gets a little bit dramatic during the afternoon. Remove some leaves there. I think that's it. So it's just going to be a lot of cleanup. Now, anything that I don't think is diseased that I remove from the plants will go into this. I think it's technically a trash can from Home Depot. And this is what I use to take it through the house and out to the back garden, where I will then dump all of that material into my composter. But again, anything that I think might have some sort of disease, like the curling tomato, I'm not going to add. It's going straight in the garbage. All right, for this petunia, I know it looks really sad, but I think I am going to try to leave whatever parts are green, just take the dead out, which again is most of it. But let's just trim you, trim you. I mean, that looks pretty sad, but I'm going to try to give it a chance. Also, look how well these caladiums are doing. I think this is the clowning around caladium. I love them back there. I'm going to take after this petunia next. This is the Hoopla Vivid Orchid. I think it's been everyone's favorite of the new 2024 releases, so I am kind of sad to trim it, but I know it needs to be done and that it will look better in just a couple weeks. I also just realized that my Nemesia is not doing great. I don't know if it's a water issue or sun issue. I think I'm going to trim this up a bit too and just see what happens. Alright, I've trimmed this main bed of petunias. I didn't take off as much as I thought I might. I basically just trimmed right around the herbs and then just a few pieces that were trailing down further than I liked. The two pots I'm worried about. Now these pots I am more worried about because, I mean, they definitely needed a trim, which I lifted off some from the bottom, but I think if you can see in there, it definitely seems like signs of root rot. So the leaves at the base are yellowing and dying. Basically, these pots don't get as much sun because they're blocked by the bed for half of the time the sun's out here. And I already had the water turned off, the automatic watering. It hasn't rained in a few days, and this is still moist. So I think the soil is staying too moist, or it's staying too moist because it's not in the sun enough. So I'm moving this just over here into the sun. Now this one looks even sadder. I mean, the petunia still looks okay, but the Nemesia is just a mess right now. I mean, there were no blooms left on it. Gave it a trim. I don't know what's going to happen. It looks very close to death. So I'll give it a few days. If it bounces back, I will leave it. If not, I will pull it and maybe just let the petunias take over. There is also a Super Bells in there, but that was already taken over by the petunias. Alright, I think I'm going to tackle this area next. So moving the bags out a little bit further away from the tomatoes, trimming the tomatoes a little bit just to get more airflow, and then I need to prune all the horrible looking leaves off of my rhubarb there in the back. I'm going to start pruning my tomatoes now, starting with my indeterminate. Now, sometimes I feel bad, you know, I just want the tomato to go where it wants to go, but for my sanity and the benefit of my garden, I am going to prune some of these branches off. Next, I'm going to go in and remove that little okra right there that never grew more than one leaf and one okra. I've had a hard time pulling it because it just hasn't, you know, completely died on its own, but I think it's time for you to say goodbye. Oh yeah, look at that. There's barely any roots on it. The other one is putting on some new growth. I'll probably just treat it again, maybe with some of the Captain Jack's Dead Bug Brew, because like I said, there were a good amount of aphids on it, although right now all the leaves are looking good, but this should be a lot larger than it is right now, but we'll leave that one in there for a little bit longer. I'm going to take care of this rhubarb next, which again, I think there's some sort of fungal issue, disease issue with it. I mean, leaves are yellowing, that's fine, but there's a red outline on some of these, which again, from whatever I've been able to read, at least is not good. So I'm going to go in and cut these back. Now I will say, you should probably clean your pruners between every plant. If the plant doesn't seem to be diseased to me, I don't. Again, not a best practice, clean your pruners between every plant. But since this one I feel like there is something wrong with, I will clean and sterilize. I just wash with soap and water, and then either I have alcohol wipes or alcohol spray. I'll spray it before I move on to the next plant. So I'm just going to cut everything off here that looks diseased or damaged, and hopefully I'm left with some leaves. Let me know if you know more about red leaves on rhubarb. I mean, maybe it is normal and I'm just cutting these for no reason, but everything I could tell said it was not a good sign. Also, maybe it's just time to pull the whole plant, but I really hope not, because this is now the 3rd year of my rhubarb. I think it's supposed to be the most productive this year, but obviously not if there is a lot of issues on it. Maybe this one too. Alright, I'm going to leave the rest. Actually, I'm going to take this one out too. And then I will leave the rest for now. We'll see what happens with this plant. Now, also these leaves are going into the garbage, not into the pile for my compost. I'm going to go clean these and I'll be right back for the next plant. Quick update. I'm actually going to take a little break, so just clean my pruners. It is getting just too hot out there for me in the afternoon sun up on the rooftop deck. So I'm going to let the pollinators do their thing. They're happy in the garden, and I'll probably resume pruning in maybe like 3 to 4 hours when hopefully it's cooled down a little bit and I won't be in the pollinators' way as much. All right, I'm back outside. It's a little bit later in the day. It is the same day, even though I've had a costume change. The overalls I was wearing earlier were just too warm. So I think next I need to grab my pruners, which are inside next to the sink. Oh, hello, Dev. And then I think I'm gonna take after this tomato plant, which I kind of went down a rabbit hole on leaf curl with tomatoes. I think I've narrowed it down to what it is, and I think the best option is going to be a pullet. So let me show you the tomato plant, because I think it's a little easier to see now that the sun's not shining directly on it. So I think from my internet deep dive, this is likely the virus curly top. At least it seemed to fit that description the most, because again, the leaves at the bottom, where if it was some sort of environmental factor, so the weather, sun, water, some sort of, I don't know, herbicide, not that that would be up here, but if it was anything that was environmental, these leaves should be affected and the new leaves would be fine. However, you can see here all the new leaves, no matter where on the plant, are curly. So I mean, this, even if I left it, just I don't think is going to do anything. It's not like the new growth looks good, so I could just, you know, trim some off and then get a bunch of new growth. So I'm going to pull this completely just so the virus doesn't spread. Now typically in this case I would empty out the potting soil too and not use it, but since there are things growing in here, I'm just gonna leave them and see how it goes. But let's go ahead and take out the tomato plant. Now, like I said, I cleaned my pruners after the rhubarb, just in case that was some sort of fungal infection. I am going to clean them again after I do this. I also like to use my hands instead of gloves when I'm working with anything with a virus, because that way, if it's something that can be transferred by touch, it's much easier to wash my hands than it is to wash my gloves. Tomato plant is removed. I will show you it in just a second, but I have an idea. that I don't know if it's gonna work or not, but we're gonna find out. Okay, look, I said I had an idea, but I didn't say it was a good idea. Essentially, I missed having my walkway easily available, and I was definitely stepping on the pumpkin, probably more than I should have been. So now that the tomato plant is gone, and I have this cage here, I have put the vines on the cage. I think I'm gonna also add some twine just to tie them in place, but because the weight was pulling the cage that way, I do this a lot with my plants, I've shoved a giant nursery pot in there to keep it upright. I might look for something a bit more stable too, but this is happening again. Not sure if it's a good thing that it's happening, but we're gonna go with it. Also, I have a pumpkin. I've never successfully grown a pumpkin because all of my pumpkins in the past usually get infected with some sort of virus, probably spread by beetles, at least that is my assumption. But if I get one pumpkin, maybe this will be worth it. I was gonna give up on pumpkins, and then this one was sent from Ball Horticultural, so we'll see how it does. But obviously that's the largest one. There's a little baby one. Also, these just opened up. So this first one opened up yesterday or 2 days ago. The rest just started to open up. I am so excited. I had these planted here last year, the exact same spot. Summer Sunridge Provence. I think I've been saying Provence, but I think it's actually Provence if you're fancy. But these are single stem sunflowers and they look really pretty. And this is what has ended up in the tin for composting. So again, my tomato plants, anything that I thought might have been infected, the rhubarb leaves, those are in my garbage can, which is back there on the other side of the cart. This is everything that I'm going to put into the composter. So I think that's going to be everything. Oh, little bumblebee. But I think that's going to be everything for today. It does feel nice to get some things cleaned up that I needed to. I didn't do anything on the back deck, although that for some reason doesn't seem like it needs as much maintenance. There's not as many things growing out of control there yet, but it feels a little nice to have this kind of checked off my list. I will keep you updated on how the Vivid Orchid Hoopla petunias do after they've been cut back with the root rot. I'm hoping everything looks okay. I mean, even if just the petunias survive, I'll be happy with that. Anything else? I'll keep you updated on how the pumpkin trellis goes. But other than that, that's everything I had to do today in the garden. So I will see you in the next video. Bye.